Hello, Ann and Johannes. I am so excited to have you on the All Things Iceland podcast. So, welcome.
Yay! Thank you. Nice to see you.
And today we're jumping into a topic that is fascinating for many different reasons. But one is that it's extremely unique, kind of what the two of you are spearheading. And before we jump into that, though, because I'm excited about the citizen scientist, I've never heard that term before speaking with you and also experiencing one of these expeditions. And I'm just kind of curious, though, if you can give a little bit of a brief overview of your backgrounds and how you became involved with the Katla UNESCO Global Geopark.
No, I'll have you go first. Okay. Great. Well, my name is Ann Peters, and I'm a project manager with Katla Geopark. And I had always heard about Katla Geopark and wanted to be a part of a nonprofit. And my background, originally, I'm an American, much like you, Jules, right? And I started a company here in Iceland called Iceland Wedding Planner. And so I'm very familiar with offbeat areas of Iceland, and the glaciers I've been obsessed with since 2010. And specifically Katla Glacier, because she's a subglacial volcano and she's this like lurking kind of, mysterious thing that's like surrounding within Katla Geopark. And so there was an opportunity that came up in June or July of last year. And they were looking to transition the focus of Katla Geopark into research and into science. So I'll have Johannes talk a little bit more about his project that kind of spearheaded this movement within Katla Geopark. But the bottom line is that I was brought on to develop out science-driven tourism. And what that means is that it is science that everyone can participate in. It's open science. Citizen science means that everyone, no matter their age or their background or anything, can participate. You don't need to have credentials. I mean, credentials, are fabulous in some things for the dynamics of what we're doing. But, my mom, who has zero background in science or science in the idea of citizen science or geology or glaciology or coastline research can participate in. And so the idea here is to have tourists and locals or anyone that wants to participate to basically fund the research projects that are captivating our coastlines so that we have an understanding. There's no one managing outside of Johannes right now what our coastlines are doing with erosion, with storm recovery. Our glaciers, we're lucky if some of the outlets within Katla Geopark and within Iceland in general are getting terminus or 3-point measurements. Whereas I challenged the idea of our glacier outlets here within the geopark, Tindfjallajökull, Katla, the Katla, our Mýrdalsjökull outlets. So we have Katla Glacier, Sandfellsjökull, Krossjökull, we have many. Those are not being monitored, and they have impacts like glacier outburst floods, for example, whether they're mini or they're large, it all is connected and affects us. And so the idea is that tourists or locals will come in and they will pay to have a spot, whether it's in the coastline or the glaciers, that they pay to be a part of this research project. But not paying in the idea of us making profit, because we are a nonprofit. The idea is that we are able to pay the Super Jeep teams that are involved within the geopark, and they're patronizing them because they get that really super cool ride up there. They get the education, they get the gear. So to be able to create the data that the citizen scientists will go out and do is that they will need to, we have gear. We need a TopCon GPS, a computer, the actual GPS heads. We have all of these different dynamics along with drones and also ground cameras, and then just being able to, write observations of what is happening. So to be able to fund these research projects, we have people paying a certain dollar amount that will then be able to go back into support the organizations that are within Katla Geopark and also our organization to further this research concept. And so I was challenged with this because our global geopark here is funded by 3 municipalities, right? So we have Ranga Eastri, we have Rega Eastri.
Mýrdalsreppur and Skaftarhöfn.
Right. We have all three of those municipalities. And the idea is that these research projects will also help us take less from the municipalities, and we can be sustainable and self-funded, right? And that's what these research projects are also to do as well, and to strengthen the visibility within our geopark, because there isn't as visibility as much. So that's what I've been brought on to do and challenged with. And that's what we formally launched these expeditions in April of this year. And then we have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We have different phases that we're rolling out in the midst of that. But I'll let Johannes introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is Johannes Marteinn, and I'm the general manager of Katla UNESCO Geopark and also the geologist for the geopark. And I've been working 6 years with the geopark. And one of the functions of the geopark originally, which was funded in 2010, was to try to bring more tourists into the area then, because then there was not that much tourism in Iceland. But the 2010 erosion of Eyjafjallajökull helped us a lot with that. And so the geopark kind of lost its role, essentially, because we got tourism here. So since then, it's been mainly focused on education, building up the education sites here within the geopark, education to the schools, all visitors, of course, and everybody who lives within the geopark. And in the last few recent years, more research. So it's a continuation of this process that's been going on for the last few years to start this citizen science tourism that we hired Ann in last year. Very lucky to get her. And and hopefully that will be the future of the geopark. And there's a lot of things that need to be researched and monitored. And hopefully this will be the pathway to that.
Yeah, great. Thank you, both of you, for really kind of just adding in the blanks for individuals regarding what you mentioned, Anne, about citizen scientists, and all of this encompasses. It's a lot of stuff going on that the two of you got going on, which is great. And I also think it's really helpful because we're talking about Katla. There's obviously the subglacial volcano, but then when you talk about the geopark itself, it encompasses a lot of area. And so, Anne, if you could give a little bit of perspective for people, if you will, in terms of like, how big is this geopark? What are we talking about? And what makes it specifically unique? Because we have Katla, the volcano, and Glacier, but there's a lot else, right, that's happening in this place. So it'd be nice just to give people a bit of an idea of what that encompasses.
He's the seasoned expert here. And
okay, so Johannes.
Johannes?
The area of the geopark is quite vast. It's almost 10,000 square kilometers. So it's almost 10% of Iceland. And to put it in perspective, I don't know, it's larger than Manhattan, I believe, at least.
Yeah.
So it's fairly big. It's one of the biggest UNESCO geoparks in the world. And so Katla just gives its name, and the name Katla was chosen because Katla is, of course, a very famous volcano, but it also all three municipalities share parts of Katla, so it's a unifying thing. So there were ideas of naming it Eyjafjallajökull because of the eruption in 2010, but luckily it went to Katla. Now everybody knows Eyjafjallajökull today because of the eruption, but Katla essentially used to be the most famous volcano along with Hekla before the 2010 eruption. So, but other things. So to be able to become a UNESCO Global Geopark, you have to have geology of international significance within the realm, and Katla is one of them. But there is also Eyjafjallajökull, of course. Eldgjá, which is the fissure form from Katla volcano, and it erupted in 939 and created Eldgjárhraun, which is the largest lava field that has been formed on the planet in the last 1,200 years. It's mostly covered by Skaftareldahraun, which was formed in the Skaftareldar or Lagagia eruption in 1783 to 84, which is also one of the international significant sites. And then we have the pseudo craters, or the rootless cone fields of Altaver and Landbrotshólar, which were formed in the eruption in 939 when lava flowed over wetlands. And then we have hylioclastite ridges up in the highland, which are a unique geological formation, especially due to the length of them. So these are the significant geological sites. And most of them are the least popular tourist sites, which is the funny thing. But then, of course, being a geopark, our main focus is, of course, on geology, but it also focuses on history, society, culture, and whatnot. But we're lucky in Iceland that we have different agencies and a lot of organizations that work on that with us. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And as someone who has experienced like a fraction, a very small fraction, like you were talking about Eldgjá and like, Katla or Eyjafjallajökull, like there's so much that's packed in this area. And I didn't even realize it was 10% of Iceland. That's incredible. So there's a lot of area that it covers. And you mentioned earlier, Anne, as a citizen scientist, like what that entails for people. So I'm glad that they have that sort of definition, which is quite broad in a good way, right? Because it allows it to be really inclusive. And so I'm wondering, though, like, people who come to Iceland, they're often seeing like the Instagrammable stuff, right? Like a lot of other people there. How is the experience different for a citizen scientist? Like, what are they contributing, if you will? And I'm only I'm asking it as if I don't know. I have been on expeditions, so I'm just want other people to hear it for themselves. And I will talk a little bit about my experience because I had a great time, and I also felt like I was being very useful. But it would be good to like get a little bit of an idea of, okay, great, you're coming and you don't have to be a scientist per se, but like, how do you switch roles from just being a typical tourist to being a citizen scientist?
And that's absolutely my objective when I came into crafting the different expeditions, was that I wanted it to come off the page and I wanted it to feel like you're leaving a positive legacy behind. That was honestly hands down my objective, because again, my background with Iceland Wedding Planner is that I always wanted my clients, guests, couples to walk away with, and I just discovered it kind of feeling. Very impactful, very intimate experience, right? So if you think about from a dynamic of, I'm going to come from a place of, I've been to Antarctica multiple times. And like in Antarctica, for example, they have expeditions that you're a part of that are supposed to be science driven. However, in my opinion, they are not. You sit in a classroom for an hour before you maybe come off of the boat, and maybe you're like counting penguins, or you're, paying attention to like what this like, like he was saying, like hyloclastic ridges and like different dynamics, or what the textures are, things. But in Antarctica, you can't touch things. I mean, like your boots that you are given to you, the boots that you have to go on and off of shore. You have to clean everything. You can't go home with anything. You can take pictures, right? You're actually not doing anything that's science driven, and they're calling it a, expedition of science, right? So the idea and the objective for me that I wanted it to hit home with people is that they actually participate exclusively, right? So they're the ones operating the GPS, right? Like we give you the briefing, we give you the training on what to do, right? Put it here, walk this many meters or feet, and do this and hit this button. You'll hear this, so you are in charge of that data. You're cultivating it literally yourself, right? So you have that piece. Then you're the one that's actually operating the drone, right? So we need you at 90 degrees in front of this piece at 300 meters. Or we need an overview shot so we can do an overlay so you can see what the results look like now, and then we continue to track it. Right? So there's perimeters that the people are cultivating the data, and then like ground shooting. Well, we want you to stand in this spot and take this picture. And then we're going to be like maybe overlaying it as the missions, increase, right? And then we can, then people, let's say, you came out with us in July, right? And so in July of 2025, it looked like this in this area. And then maybe your friend or your listeners or your followers come, this fall. They can visually see the impact on how things are changing. What did the summer melt do? They're able to actually have an understanding of that. So it's not just the recession of the actual glaciers, but we're also tracking something called dead ice. And dead ice is this kind of unknown dynamic that, people really don't know about, especially here in Iceland. It's ice that's broken away from the main part of the glacier. And with that, we need to track its longevity. We need to track how, does our black volcanic sand insulate it or expedite the melt process? In seasons, what does it look like? Is it happening faster in this time period? Or is it, direct sunlight? Or is it the rain? Because we had the rainiest September on record. There's different trends that we'll be able to track, right? And people that are going to be out on these expeditions have the ability to firsthand cultivate it, create it, and actually see it happen, right? So that's really impactful. And then on the other side of it, we have, our coastlines. We're going to be mapping our entire coastline from Landeasander all the way out to Skaftdal or Meðalandi. It's this huge, massive stretch that hasn't been monitored outside of the beach here in Víkjafjörður, right? Which Johannes is doing with the school kids here, right? And so being able to see what it looked like before the storm and after the storm, and if we're going out there and planting grass, or if they're extending it, or are the groins working, what's happening at Reynisfjara? That's like our most visited beach in all of Iceland. It's the most dangerous as well. What does that look like? So instead of just visiting Reynisfjara, they actually get to cultivate data on Reynisfjara. You get to see the pretty things, but then you actually get to participate in something bigger than yourself and leave that positive legacy behind you here in Iceland. So that's the impact that I'm looking for. And that's the impact that we've created here within these research projects. So taking it off the page, taking it out of the camera, taking it beyond themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And I mean, just to give a little bit of context, so like I mentioned, I went with you too on an expedition, and we did several different type of activities. So it was collecting data on dead ice at the glacier and the coastline. And all three, were fascinating and interesting. And I remember, Johannes, you talking about when collecting the data, it's not just that you collect it and then you hope that scientists do something with it and you never get to see the actual results. But the idea is that you collect it and then results are sent to you, right? So is there, along with this, because you mentioned, Ann, about, you have leaving a legacy or seeing how it's impacting Iceland, do people get to see how the data is progressing, like an overall picture? Or is it their specific data? Like, how is it, are they able to see the change? Because people are coming back to Iceland time and time again now, right? Or they've been maybe 5 years ago and they're coming back and they maybe want to see, if they do an expedition like this, how it's changed even from 5 years ago, from what they had known Iceland just as a tourist, but now as a citizen scientist, they have a little bit more information, So I'm just curious about how that data is shared, and then, how individuals can maybe track what is happening in Iceland, because I know a lot of people are concerned due to climate change, what's happening and how the country is transforming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so each person that participates, including yourself, will get a report on his or her measurements, and it's broken down in a few steps. So let's say if you're measuring the terminus of the glacier, you'll get your specific measurements on a map with an aerial photograph that you yourself have taken of the glacier as you were measuring as well. So you'll see your measured line. But then you will also have a map of all measured lines in this location, so you can see the process that's already been done. And then each research report is published on our webpage, so people will be able to follow the steps. So if they ever want to come back, let's say in 10 years, they will be able to see the process since their measurements. And then, of course, we can make a specific report for them if they want to compare just their own measurements, for example. That's with the glacial terminus. Same thing, essentially, with the dead ice, but it's more picturesque as well. You do measure the dead ice, but the photographs are more impactful there because it's such a dynamic environment. It's forever changing. And with the profiles, the beach profiles, you get a profile basically of the beach that you measure. And that's one profile. And depending on how long the profile has been measured, you have measurements before and after. So you can compare changes in the location of the profile, the length, the volume, and so on. So if you do more than one profile measurement, you can compare your own, and or you get just the line you measured and comparison to previous lines. So you'll be able to see if the coastline is regressing or building forward.
Yeah, and the objective for our missions is that every person, you'll get yours today, is going to get a citizen scientist certificate. So that will be emailed so they can print it out and they can add it to their resume, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really impactful thing. Like I know when I was going through high school and college and even, first few jobs, adding citizen scientists for Katla Geopark probably would have made a difference, because it is also a conversation starter and, it's a resume builder with that. So they will walk away with a citizen scientist certificate from our team saying that they've participated in whatever project that they have participated in. And then they're going to be put on a newsletter that will then, so like when dead ice is measured, when Katla, is measured again, when whatever they participated in, they will get the continuous results so that they can continue to track. So again, maybe when your family comes back or their family or their friends come back, maybe a few months later or a year later, they'll continue to be able to see what is happening. So we build a community of citizen scientists.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that's a great way of keeping people connected literally to Iceland, because so many people come and they love it, but also are concerned, right? And rightfully so. There's a lot happening in the world, and in terms of how our environments are changing. And I mean, even with just when we did the coastal mapping, that wasn't even on my mind. It's usually the glaciers that we hear about so much, that in terms of receding or in being impacted. So I also learned a lot about how the landscape of Iceland in general and what can be tracked based off of capacity currently, because that's I think a big part of it sounds like to me about citizen scientists is that capacity wise there's not a whole bunch of like scientists just running around being able to study this, but getting people involved who are coming here who are already invested in Icelandic landscape and how beautiful it is and everything is a nice like way of feeling like you're included in your Icelandic journey of being like, much more useful basically than who feels like a tourist that just takes, right? So, okay. When it comes to the expeditions, and because I know like even with your wedding planning, you do like very remote locations, and we went to some remote areas, but I know people are going to be wondering, because even though it's inclusive for everybody has different levels of activity that they can do, right? So some people can do like maybe going up on a mountain and doing something, or more tough terrain. So how is it in terms of activity level? I mean, is it geared towards certain activity levels, or is there a range of them?
Mm-hmm. Great question. So I've designed for everyone, right? From like, 6 years old, and maybe even case by case, if there's a parent that wants to, strap their child to their backs or their, fronts or something like that. And also, Katla Glacier is probably the most accessible and easiest, as you experience, maybe a 5-minute walk, a 10-minute walk, depending on what areas we're doing. So the idea is that if we need to customize an expedition for someone, we have the ability to do that. All of our expeditions are not open tours. They're not open expeditions. You're not signing on to a seat like you do at like the ice caves or, in any other regard. These are private experiences at this moment where, a family goes out or a group of friends goes out or a couple goes out and experiences. So they get this one-on-one experience, with our team and with the Super Jeep teams and stuff, so that they're not, we can adjust to their hiking abilities. We can adjust, I sent an email to you and asked you, like, do you want me to bring hiking poles? We already bring, the extra, we take that care and that time to make sure that we're setting everyone up for success. But on the other side of it, as well, we do have, 2-hour hikes. If we want to go up to Entijökull, if we want to go out to Krossjökull, we're looking at an hour to, 90 minutes of, one way, by the time we actually get to the base of the glacier, and then going around, there's additional walking. So we can provide recommendations, based on what people are after.
Yeah, great. And I'll just give, again, personal perspective. So I am 26 weeks pregnant. And when we went, I was 24, I think. And initially we had a different type of adventure in mind. Come to find out there was some kind of glacial flooding or something like that happening anyway. So we couldn't go in the area. But I had asked, I was like, well, maybe we do it a little less hardcore because I needed that adjustment. So I can speak personally that it was very easily adjusted, and I felt, first of all, really excited about what we were doing, and like you flying the drone and the equipment and all this other stuff. So it can be, you know, even for a person who's pregnant, not saying you have to do it if you're pregnant, but if you are, it isn't something that's a hindrance as well. And I'm wondering though, Johannes, because when you showed us the equipment, that was like interesting to me. I'd never seen this before because I'm not a geologist and I have no idea how geologists normally are doing things. So what type of equipment are you using to capture this data? And then, you know, how are people who are coming with you? Is it easy for them to be able to like jump in and do, or do you feel like you have to like get an instruction manual beforehand just to participate in collecting data?
Yeah, luckily the equipment isn't too complicated, and we're always with the people, so like help is not far away. But what we use for the GPS measurement is a Topcon TX6, very precise GPS. So the plus minus is around 5 millimeters or so. So when we are measuring the glacier, we don't have to have that level of accuracy, but when we measure the coastlines, we do. So, but we have it, so why not use it for both measurements? So, like plus minus a few centimeters in glacial measurement is a bigger deal. But because we're so far away from civilization, essentially, we're up in the highlands. We don't really have a signal, so we need a base station as well. So we have two GPSs, and the GPS talks to the other heads. We have like a fixed point for those, and then of course we have the satellites. So we set up the base. That takes a little bit more know-how. So, but it only takes like 5 to 10 minutes, and then we can use the other one to measure. So it's just a simple staff with a computer. You essentially just need to press a few buttons, and then you can measure. So it takes 5 to 10 minutes to explain, and you master it while you're doing it. So I measure a lot with school children here, for example, and they learn how to use it in a few minutes as well. So it's a very simple software. With a drone, most people by now probably have flown a drone, and if not, they probably have played a computer game at some point. Then it's a similar experience. So you don't need to know anything about this, and you will be able to contribute right away. Essentially, it's very straightforward. And same with the camera and so on. So everybody there is able to explain it to anyone who is participating. So it's a very easy thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. And both are so fun in their own ways. I mean, flying a drone, there are some people who are wanting to fly drones in Iceland, but they don't know where they can do that in a place where they have permission, in essence. So, of course, being with two experts who are on the journey, who have a drone, they're allowing you to feel like, yeah, it's totally fine. That's fun as well, because it is like playing a video game, and I love that. And I just remember when I was using the GPS to track and like dead ice, I was so concerned about being precise, and you were like, it's okay. I tried to, because I couldn't help myself. I wanted to make sure that the data that I was collecting was really good, and I didn't go too many steps and stuff like that. So I just think in general, like having the two of you there was very comforting for me to know that like I was doing it right, but also like it isn't that it's hard to mess it up in a way, if you will. So yeah. Okay. So one of the things that stuck out to me, Ann, when you mentioned earlier, is that while it's open to everybody who wants to book it, it's not a literal like, on this day there are 10 seats available and you book like that. No, it's like you have to do a private thing. So I'm just wondering, what does that amount look like in terms of people that you normally would want to bring out to do these types of expeditions? And I remember in our conversations, this is not about promoting mass tourism into these areas, right? So how are you also scaling it so that mass tourism doesn't become something of a citizen scientist thing? Because I feel like there are a lot of people who are going to be really, really interested, but trying to limit it can also have its own, issues as well. So I'm just wondering how you're tackling that.
In designing these expeditions, I also took great care in also making sure that we do risk assessments. and not just risk assessments for the individuals that are going to be participating, from us to the Super Jeep team to the tourists or visitors that are coming alongside of us, or citizen scientists, but also to the landscape as well, because I want to make sure that we're not creating a bigger problem in the idea of, creating more tracks. We want to use sheep roads, right? We all know the little paths that like the sheep, are making themselves. Or if we're going out into the coastlines, we know that in one storm, those footprints are all going to be washed away, right? Or, in the wind, right? So the objective here is that we're keeping our group sizes small. Like, we're keeping them anywhere between, 1 to 4, or like 4 to 6. Maybe we could flex to 8. We have some school groups where we'll break up into smaller groups. Maybe we have groups of 6 in different stations where, one group's working on the drone, one group is working on the GPS, one is working on observations. Maybe another one is also working on the ground photos, for example. So we try to make sure that we're limiting, and also we don't want to over in excess the data as well, because going out and measuring the same exact area that you did just, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, isn't going to cultivate any changes for us in that 2-week time period. We need to do it either quarterly, or we need to do it, twice a year, 3 times a year. And the glacier is big enough and the areas are big enough to make sure that we're not creating a massive imprint. We might take people to the northwestern side of Katla Glacier, or the center, or, in different sections, and be able to cultivate the data over the year, for example, or do a different beach. Like you did Katla, and maybe we do it again in the fall. We did it once in summer, we do it again in the fall. And then if we take someone out to Reynisfjara, maybe we're doing this section. Reynisfjara is quite big. Maybe the group only has time for, a 2-hour mission. And then we just do this section. And then another group can do this section in the same month, for example. So we're making sure that we design and plan things and, suggest to people. Like for you, when we pivoted our plan, we're like, hey, let's go see if Katlatangi is still the most southern point in Iceland, because that's something that people don't know about, right? It's a myth that Katla Geopark is busted, but it's something that people don't know. They think Deerhale still is, right? So, it's just making sure that we are designing it in a way that, we're going to get the data. We're going to get the data for the research projects, but we're not exploding it up into some viral idea. There's enough space and enough area within Katla Geopark, enough research projects that we can make sure that we maintain a level of sustainability.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it's great to hear that, because I don't think we talked about that when we were together on the expedition, which is totally fine. But it's interesting to hear how you're saying, like, there's like sections that you can take people to in order to decrease impact. And I think people would also like just appreciate understanding the scope and the overview of what sustainability looks like, because oftentimes that word for many companies is thrown out and they just mean like they're planting some trees for their emissions or something. You know what I mean? Like it's not a plan that's like really well thought out. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but in terms of just like legitimately right there and now for the environment, like what are you doing? And so it's really helpful. So thank you for that. And Johannes, when it comes to like, we've talked about, these mapping the coastline, dead ice, glaciers, and you've been working on and doing this type of work for years in this area. As you've collected data, have you discovered anything that was kind of shocking or interesting in your data as you've been researching it or looking it over about this specific area in the UNESCO Geopark?
Oh, for sure, especially the coastline, which is my specialty. And I've been monitoring the coastline here between the Marteinn and Mount Johannes for the last 5 years. And the biggest surprise is just the rate of the erosion. So I'm not going to go too deep into the history of the coastline here. It will take an hour. But we are always continuously losing ground here on the south coast. It's about 5 meters on average per year, which is quite high, right? It's one of the highest in Europe. But what we have been able to measure one time, and hopefully it will happen again. Well, not hopefully it will happen again in the future, but hopefully we'll be able to measure it in the future, because we can lose up to 100 meters of the coastline in one storm. And so that's almost insane. But when people hear the word erosion, they think, oh, it's just sand in the beach. But this is 100 meters of land that hasn't been touched by the waves for the last few hundred years. So it's a staple land that's being eroded in, and we never get it back. So 100 meters is quite a lot. And that was in a storm in February 2022. And so a storm like this should happen every few years. So these are the big events. But then normally we have smaller events where maybe you'll lose stable land maybe 3 or 4 meters in one storm or so. So these are the mega events. So they are the golden egg to measure because they are so rare, but are the biggest one. But even just measuring, I measure once a month, but essentially twice a month, 4 times a month would be perfect. That's a very dense collection of records, but once a month is standard. So each measurement, 1 month measurement, gives really important data because you have to look at the long-term trend as well. And most of the time it's fairly stable, but then you get these erosional events, as I say, the big ones, and then the beach tries to build itself up again. But then it's not fast enough to build, so then we lose more and more and more.
And it's pretty incredible to even see, like, since 2021, right? 2021, even when the kids have been measuring since out here in Víkjafjörður, the levels of the changes and like the photography that's changed as well. And then comparing it back before the groins, the big wave breakers that we have out here, on how different it looks. And like what the stability, like it's incredible to like look back on and have that history to be like, we can make an impact. Like these are helping, and measure is bringing attention, because then you're also like, to take it one step further, you get to be like equipped with this data to go to the municipalities, to go to the road authority, to go to the different bodies of the government and say, hey, hi, something's happening here. We need to do something about this. We need to have a better alert system. We need to have, more groins. We need to have, more, so that like the impact to like the tourists and the locals is going to be less and safer.
Yeah, so if I can add, like as essentially saying is the data that we're collecting in the citizen science program is not just data; it's actually data that is and will be used for benefit of the society within Katla Geopark. And the coastline measurements especially are very important for the future, because as sea level increases, the recession of the beaches are going to increase very quickly. So it's very important to have a pre-data for that. Of course, the glaciers here in Iceland have been receding since the end of the Little Ice Age in the end of 19th, beginning of 20th century. But the pace is increasing. So if we start to monitor the glaciers now very, very precisely, we'll get a better look at just how quickly they're retreating, and quickly is retreating.
Yeah.
Like
I also want to add one more thing to what he's saying as well. We have not really tracked here either any of our glaciers that are deemed inactive. And by inactive, what I mean by that is that we have a glacier outlet that's called Tindfjallajökull. And Tindfjallajökull is a hike, and that's one of the dynamics of, we take a super Jeep up to a certain point, but it's only being monitored on one side of it. And I think they're just doing 1 point measurement there. And so the idea here is that we're almost like monitoring a glacier that's on hospice. We're monitoring how long the lifespan is after it's been kind of declared inactive, but there's still ice. Like when you're driving the southern road and you look up at Tindfjallajökull, it has 3 peaks, and like being able to see it in the distance and have the knowledge that like now Katla Geopark is going to be monitoring it. How long is it going to take to disappear? It's a glacier outlet that is going to disappear in our lifetime. And so that's one of the most impactful things. Like I get goosebumps when I start thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
Is that this is an opportunity for people to actually come in and put their stamp, put their name to a project that is happening, as we speak, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's a part of it that's like so exciting, and then there's a part of it that's really sad to think that like the glaciers are receding to the point where you said like there's hospice, and then they're no longer at some point. Mm-hmm. And that also makes me wonder, is there anything that we can be doing, right? Like what is, in terms of in our lives? I know that's a major question, and it's not meant for you two to be experts on, like, how do we reverse climate change? That's not what I'm asking. But, it's just like my brain went there to, like, what could we be doing differently? Because this feels like, oh,
like all the time.
no.
Yeah, so I like in my mind, like even when I started thinking about this, like, is there some kind of like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but is there some kind of like cover or shield that we can put on top of the glaciers to stop them from receding, right? I think bubble, right? Like, it's not like we are past the point of saving any of these glaciers. All we can do is direct attention to them and provide visibility and to provide data. This is happening all around the world to a certain degree, like, people in Svalbard, people in Norway, like everyone is seeing this major glacier change. Antarctica, Greenland, big icebergs are, dropping off, sea levels increasing, all of the different things. So all we can do is that set a example and be a part of something bigger, right? By collecting this data. And then being able to, provide the decision makers, because the things that we are doing here in Iceland can impact the rest of the world, the EU, like the world, and like what we're doing. If everyone starts monitoring the glaciers, we have a more keen eye to what is happening. How fast is this happening? Is this happening in our children's lifetime? Is this happening in their children's lifetime?
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful because, again, there's value add regardless if the overall picture feels a little bit like but at the same time, I mean, when I've heard about how glaciers in Iceland receding, it also opens up a landscape that we've never seen before, right? So I also think about how in the transformation of that and what that could look like and how Iceland will change or is potentially changing. So, okay, this next question, it might feel a little bit like trying to ask you, like, who's your favorite child or something. But I'm just wondering, in terms of the expeditions for each of you, is there one in particular that stands out that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, so mine is Sandfellsjökull. Sandfellsjökull is a mysterious beast that I've been going to for probably the last 5 years, and it's an area that's very dynamic in geology. The mountain's very beautiful that's nearby. It has two glacier outlets that are kind of ripping each other's apart, and then each outlet is also ripping itself apart too, where there's like a rock shelf that's kind of protruding as well. And it's an area that is really dynamic to even just drive up to. That's probably my favorite one.
Well, my favorite one is just any bit of coastline. Essentially, you're out there essentially by yourself, nobody around except the group, of course, you're with. You never know what you're going to find on the beach, so you could even find an old shipwreck, and just the ever-changing landscape there. So it's amazing.
Yeah, cool. And you mentioned this, and I think a little bit regarding, like, you could go in the fall or maybe spring. Is this all year expeditions, meaning like it's any month that people can do this, or is it restricted because of weather and winter or whatever else? So if you could just give an overview about how often or when these expeditions are happening.
Yeah, so Coastlines every day of the year. You tell me what day you want to come, we'll hook you up with a beautiful coastline, right? Tindfjallajökull is limited because of accessibility, so we're running that adventure maybe from, depending on snow levels, March, April to, again, snow levels somewhere like September, October, November. Just depends on how early or how late winter stays. And then Katla Glaciers year round, dead ice or not, or actually mapping the glacier. Sandfellsjökull, Krossjökull, those are a little bit more dependent because of the highlands, but if we have a group that also wants to, rent a helicopter, that's an option. We can do these at any point in time as well, but we're limited in regards to the Super Jeep on a few of them. But the Katla, dead ice, glacier mapping, and coastlines we're running year round. So it doesn't matter what time year that people want to visit, we can accommodate.
And of course, everyone can I'll have links to these different expeditions in the description of this video. And of course, podcast episode on allthingsiceland.com. So don't worry, you can read up about it, ask questions to, I'm guessing, to Ann or whoever is available, Johannes, and whoever answers emails basically for like questions people might have about this. And I've enjoyed this immensely. But before we end off, I have to ask the question that I love to ask all of my guests. And you can choose which one of you wants to go first, but what is your favorite Icelandic word or phrase?
Oh, you get to go first.
Well, you can always go with Þetta reddast,
Yeah.
of course. And Jæja is also a lot of fun. Yes.
Yeah.
But being Icelandic, I'm just gonna. My favorite word of all time, though, is genau in German. Just
Oh,
have to
okay.
say.
Wait a minute. It's like being Icelandic, my favorite word is German.
Yeah. Which you can kind of translate as nákvæmlega in Icelandic, but we don't use it the same way, and it's not as fun to say it. But genau, yeah, it's
So like
I find it
precisely or
very nice.
exactly or something like this.
Yeah, genau, like yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So I would say mine is a tie between yokel, being glacier, right? Or my favorite type of snowfall, which is called hun slapadriva, right? And it
Ooh.
means like really big ass snowflakes, right? And I love watching that outside of my window and I pray for it. You know, I really want to be able to see because I love snow. So probably hun slapadriva. That's right,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
Yeah, it's
and
cute. It's
I have a similar one, rock raskat.
Wait, say it again.
Rock raskat.
What does that one mean?
It's a very windy place, but I'm not gonna give a direct translation because it's a dirty word. So,
yeah, the raskat.
so
Okay, so in Hun Slapatriva, I mean, it's like the snowflakes are as big as dog paws or something like this, right? It's
You
like,
got it.
yeah. So yeah, those are really fun. Okay, thank you for sharing, and thank you, of course, for really diving in to what you're doing here. I think it's amazing and fascinating. And as someone who has personally experienced it, first of all, I had a ton of fun. The two of you are great to be around, so informative, answered all of my questions, even if they were kind of silly, because I was so new to, feeling like a geologist. And I really did. It was not one of those, like you mentioned, Anne, it wasn't a circumstance in which you were coming out to like count penguins, as you mentioned, but the actual impact was you're adding to physical data that's being used in Iceland. And that is such a huge thing to know that you get to be able to do that. And so I appreciate that you're doing this and that's a nonprofit and, all of that. And so if there's anything else you want to add, you can feel free to do that. But I've been, enjoying this immensely and kind of sharing this information.
Yay. Well, we are just, I think my hope and my objective is that I want to challenge people to be a part of something bigger and leave a positive legacy behind in Iceland, right? And maybe even change how tourism is. Like last chance tourism gives you the opportunity to participate in something bigger than yourself and create a memory that you normally can't get in other places. And that's what we're about here in Iceland is, being able to create these really impactful experiences that will stay with people.
Absolutely. Great. And
Thank you so
thank
much.
you. And I'll be directing people, who want to learn more. And feel free to reach out to Katla Geopark to get a better understanding. But on the website, you have plenty of great information. So lots going on there. Check it out. Thanks again. And we'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.